Hello Internet, and thanks for joining me on this next tutorial. Today we're just going to have a look at building our first graphic inside of Viz. If you haven't watched it already, I'd advise you, if you're new to Viz, to watch our first tutorial about starting Viz Artist for the first time. It just goes through the basics of the user interface really fast. Hopefully it doesn't drag on too much. But once you've watched that, we can get into actually making a graphic. So, as explained in the previous video, we need to start our GH terminal, our graphics hub. And once that's started, we can load up Artist. Now again, when you load up Artist and you need to log into the graphics hub database, we need to use the admin password, which is as default VizDB. It's a capital V and a capital D. Otherwise you can log in as guest mode and you don't need to use a password. Once we're in Viz, we're greeted with our 4-quadrant screen again. And all I'm going to do is create an example project, and I'm going to store it in a new folder. So I'm going to create a sub project folder. I'm going to call it Tuts 102. Okay, it's always good practice just to keep things nicely arranged in folders. Just later on down the line, you don't want to come back to a project that's really messy and really hard to understand. So it's always good to be quite strict with yourself and be nice and tidy from the start. Once we've got our folder, we can create a new scene. We can right-click on our server window and create new scene from here, or we could just save or save as the scene from here, because when you load up Viz, it automatically starts you in a scene, a totally blank scene. So we could just save as and then click on the folder we want to save it in, and then we will save it as, I'm going to make a name strap. So we're going to save the scene name as name strap. Okay, once that's saved, you can see the little head and shoulders icon. That means we're actually editing that scene at the moment. At the bottom here, you can see the scene you're currently editing as well. You can see the path of it, so you know which scenes you're working with. If I close the scene, you can see the little head and shoulders icon goes away. So with the scene back open, and obviously we can see it's open when we see the path again, what we're going to first do is build a group that everything's going to go inside. So we're going to click our group icon, and I'm going to call this key, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Within our group, I want to put another group, so I'm going to click the group icon again. I'm going to drag that group into key, and you notice there's different icons as you click and hold. You get this little grey box with a white box just below and to the right of it, or if I drag it down a little bit further, you'll see the white box is underneath. If the white box is underneath, that means that I'm putting that group or container directly below the previous container. If it's just below and to the right, it means I'm going to be putting it inside, and that's what I want. So as you can see, it's no longer directly below. The group is inside of the key, and now I get this little arrow to the left of the key. If I click that, I can collapse and expand that group. Now anything I do to this top group, for instance if I change its position, the position of anything inside of it will also change relative to it. So I'm going to call this group adjust, because I like to be able to adjust the position of my whole graphic in case I want to move it up, everything up a bit, everything down a bit. So I call this one adjust. I then create another group and put that group inside of the adjust. And I'm going to call it background, and this is going to be the background to my bar. So obviously we've started from absolute scratch, so I need to go to built-ins, and I'm going to use one of Viz's default built-in geometry objects. So this is my background. I'm going to use this object called a noggy. Now I could drag it onto background, but my background might consist of lots of objects to make up my background. So I'm going to create another object inside of background, and I'm going to call that background bar. And in case you don't know how to rename something, all it is a very quick double click on the actual text of the container. So I might refer to these as groups or containers, but I'm basically talking about the same thing. So now I've got my background bar, I'm going to put my noggy on this background bar, and as you can see, the noggy appears in my graphic preview. Now I can change the position by clicking the XYZ icon here, and then going up to position, and then I can change it on X, Y, or Z. If I want to reset one of the position values, I just click the R button. If I want to reset them all at the same time, I just double click the R button, and that puts it back to 0, 0, 0. Here I can adjust the scaling, the rotation, and my axis center point. Well, I'm just going to leave it like that for now. If I click the noggy icon, it exposes all the different properties of the noggy that I am able to change. I always prefer, if I can, to change the height and width in here rather than changing the scaling on an individual level. So if these SLP means single, which means I can adjust the scaling of each dimension independently. L means locked, so they all kind of scale at the same value. And proportionally means if I've said scaled that to 2, and then I click proportion. Now if I make Y 2, X should double to 4, because you're doubling Y, it should double X as well. So that's just a quick rundown of the scaling. But if possible, I like to actually adjust my scale, adjust my width and height rather than the scale from the actual object properties. I think it's better practice. So I'm going to make a little name bar, look like that. Okay, and then on top of this background group, I'm going to create another group, and I'm going to call it elements. And this is where I'm going to put things that go on top of my bar. And in my case, for this graphic, I'm going to put my text on top of the bar. Now, when you go to import to put text in your scene, unfortunately, there's no default text objects in Viz. What you have to do is import a font. So if you go to Server, select the folder that you want to put your font into. I'm just going to put it into my tutorial folder. Then go to import, and what you have to do is look for a font on your system or on your network. To do that, just from this right hand drop down menu, just click fonts, and then that will show all the fonts in any particular folder. I'm using the Ubuntu font, and then all I'm going to do is just drag in the Ubuntu bold font to the left hand side. And what it will do, it will create different variations of the same font, so it will be the same weight of font, but with different blur effects without lines. If I go back to my server, I then get back to the default view, and then what I can do is within my elements folder, because I might have lots of elements, again create another group, put it inside of elements, and I'm going to call it text. And then I'm going to just drag my default Ubuntu bold font. If you click on and hold the others, you see its naming, and you can see when it's a blur font, blur 2, blur 3, outline 1, outline 2, etc. So I'm just going to stick with the default font and drag and drop it onto my text layer. Okay, can't actually see anything at the moment, but what you'll see in the top right hand corner is the properties window for text. So here we can type the name of the person, Joe Smith for instance, and we can click the XYZ icon here or down here to get the same options. These container plugins here get replicated up here, so you can click on either, and we can adjust our position so the name starts at the start of the bar. Now unfortunately you can see here that we've got some color issues. Basically the bar and the text are the same color, so it makes it very difficult to see. So we're going to add a material to the background bar. We're going to make it blue. So to add a material, you can either select a material from your M menu here for materials, but we don't have one, so we can do one of two things. We can right click and create new material from this menu, or by clicking on a container, right click, we can add a material here as well. So if we add a material, you'll see a material option comes up. We can click it and then we can change the color. Now because I'm not playing with lighting effects in this scene, I'm going to turn the diffuse color down, specular color down, and the ambient color down, and I'm just going to use the emission color. I'm going to just create a kind of a blue bar, kind of a dark blue bar there. Perfect. Now as you can see, the text is behind the blue bar, and that is because if we go to our X, Y and Z, you can see the Z value is the same. So we've got one or two options. We can either drag the elements folder below the background. This basically renders anything below something else. The element below it has the Z priority. So if the text is below the background, the text will be on top. The background is below the text, the background will be on top. If you don't want to do that and you want the text above, we can change the Z value just very slightly, and then it will appear on top of the bar. However, you must remember that if you do this, the text won't be sitting on exactly the same layer. If you add too big a Z value and you move the bar around, for instance, you might get a bit of a parallax effect. So I'm going to just leave it at 0.1 for now, and then what I'm going to do is actually scale down the text a little bit so it fits onto the bar. I'm going to go into my text settings, and if I turn my bounding box on by clicking this BB button, you can see the vertical alignment of the text is actually at the bottom of the lettering. I'm going to change that so it's at the center of the lettering, and then it kind of fits in with my bar very well. What I can do now is then adjust the position of my bar down to the bottom left hand corner, and if I turn on my safety zones, a title safe, let's just align it with the edge of title safe. Perfect. Okay, and then I can turn all this off. Now you can see I've got a bit of a tilt on the bar, so that's this stretch option. So I'm going to just turn that off so it makes a nice straight bar, and then I feel like the corners are a little bit too rounded, so I'm just going to half the corners. There we go, perfect. Now I might then decide, oh, my bar's a little bit too long, so I want to maybe change this to 250. However, you see how it's changing the size of the bar from the center, so when you change it smaller, it reduces the bar from either side. If we change the alignment of the bar to left, you see now when we change it, it only changes the size from the right hand side, locking the left hand side where it is. If you've got left hand justified text, this is the way you probably want to construct it. So with the horizontal alignment to the left, we can go back to our text and we can go to our text options, and we can see we're on left hand justify here. So if we go to our text position, we can then reposition that to the left hand side of the bar, 7 points in from the bar, and it's always good to try to keep the edge of the bar at 0, so you know where 0 is at all times. Again, if you click your bounding box, you can see that's on 0, and then I can just use my adjust to move it. If I turn my title safe on again, move it to title safe. Okay, so there's my very basic graphic there. Now, the reason why I called this key earlier is because when you're creating TV graphics, you need to generate what is called a fill and a key, and your vision mixer in the TV studio will take those two feeds separately and then merge them together and basically cut out the fill. And the fill is just all the colours, and the key is the cutout, because obviously you don't want all this black being seen on the TV program. It will just cover up any of the camera shot. So what we need to do is add a thing called a key. Now if you click the key button down here, you can see what the key currently looks like, and there isn't one. It's just black. What we should be seeing is some kind of grayscale image, either white, or if we've got something transparent, a grey colour. That means it will keep anything below that element and get rid of everything else. So as you can see, because everything is black, it means nothing will show at all, because it's basically getting rid of everything in our scene when we put it to a mixer. So what we need to do is go to a built-in, go to container plugins, and on global there will be this container plugin called key. Now we need to put that at the top level of the group, because anything inside of our tree will then be covered by this key plugin. Now if we go to key, you'll see we have a graphic key where our graphic is, and that means that when the fill and key reach the vision mixer, it will keep our graphic on screen and cut out all the black. So now our final thing is we need to just animate this graphic. We're going to just do a very easy animation. We're going to do just a fade in and fade out animation. To do that, what we're going to do is use this alpha. So we're still in built-ins, we're under container plugins, the alpha plugin, and that's in the global folder. Drag that onto the adjust container. Now if you click the alpha plugin, you see the properties. There's only one property: how much transparency. 100% fully opaque, 0% fully transparent. So what we're going to do is just animate it from 0 to 100 and then back to 0. To do that, if we set it on 0, we then click our set keyframe button. Just click it once. You'll see then our timeline will jump to 50. If we then make our alpha 100%, set another keyframe at 50, then our timeline jumps to 100. Then we can set alpha back to 0, press the keyframe once more, and we should have created 3 keyframes going from 0 to 100 and then 100 to 50. So now if we press play, we should see that in action. Okay, brilliant. Except we don't want that to happen on air, because what we want is it to fade on, pause or stop until we tell it otherwise, and then under someone's control then continue the animation and take the graphic off. So to fine tune it, we need to go to our stage. If we click on stage, we will see our adjust container, which has the animation on, and now it has this animation icon which looks like an alloy wheel of a car. And then we can see under adjust we've got an alpha animation, and these are keyframes, these blue blocks. Okay, so you can see if we click on one, the value goes from 0 to 100 and back to 0. Great. To add that pause or that stop point into our animation is really easy. So with our director selected, so when you create a new scene, you'll automatically be given a default director or timeline, as you might call it, when you first create an animation. So we're just going to stick with that. We're going to put our timeline over the middle keyframe when we know the graphic is on air. What I'm going to do is just use my scroll wheel on my mouse just to zoom in, and then I'm going to click down with my middle mouse button and drag over to the right so we can see the timeline in a bigger scale. You can also use the Z and the X buttons to zoom in and out. So with the middle keyframe selected when our graphic is fully on air, I'm just going to click this this button which adds a stop tag, which looks a bit like that to our animation. So now when we press play or start animation, animation will start, and when it gets to this stop tag it will stop running. Now it'll only stop running until we tell it to continue, which is this button here, and when you tell it to continue, the graphic fades off air. Now if you're using a program like Viz Trio, by default when you put a graphic on air you have a play button and a continue button, just like down here. So you can operate it in just the same way. Press play to put the graphic on and press continue to take it off. So I hope this tutorial just helps you just starting building a graphic, introduces you to adding a geometry to your scene. In this case it was the Noggy, importing some text, any Windows fonts, OTFs or TTF files you can import into Viz, adding a plugin onto a container, in this case our alpha plugin. We also added our key plugin so we can create a key signal, and then finally we created a very basic bit of animation, and we added a stop point into the animation so we could control our graphic going on and off air. Finally, if you did want to export your graphic, firstly save it and then close it. The more complex the scene you're working with, I would recommend a regular save just in case the program crashes. It does happen. And then once it's saved, what we can do, we can go to the archive dialog and drag these, either the individual scenes that you would like or the folder, into this file entry points section. And then if we look at scenes, we can see the scene that has been imported or is ready to export, I should say, and any additional elements that go with it, for instance the font. So if you use something in a scene, it will come with it into the archive, and then all we need to do is just select a folder and call it a name. then it will say the archive has been created and it's this VIA file, and then you can just stick that onto your memory stick, take it away with you, back it up either on your server or online somewhere, and then you can very easily import it at a later stage on another machine, or if you wipe your database and you want to get all your work back again, you can import it again. I hope that helps. Any questions, just leave a comment below, and hopefully see you back again for another tutorial soon.